I would like to take you on the journey on how TNO was first thinking and later trying to realize together with others a new way of management of exposures of substances, mainly. And this is Henk, and he works on a construction site, and he thought everything was fine. And but he did talk to some older colleagues, and they were a bit worried because some fell ill and they had stories. And so he thought maybe I'm at risk for health risks. And he talked to his manager, but he said, no. Some years ago, or maybe a year ago, we had measurements. We have this report. Everything is below exposure level. And so don't worry. But still, Henk thought, I wish I had a little bit more clues to actually talk with my manager about what's going on, or maybe initiate some activities myself. So Henk is a little bit lonely at the construction site, but we try to, at the end, come back to it, whether we maybe can help him more by having a little bit more ownership and tools to do something about his environment. And of course, all of you know that occupational diseases related to exposures is quite large, and I don't actually have to go into the figures because that's basics for you. But for me, it's always a bit, I always wonder why society really accepts these risks to some extent. It's not a societal concern, really. If you walk by a construction site, silica dust, crystalline silica dust really is a problem and a serious threat to health. And it doesn't seem to be really an issue society-wise compared to other things. And that might be due to, of course, you all know that also, but I think I can highlight it a bit. Because the awareness of the risk is rather low because of long latencies, not always clear relationships, not so not really one-to-one relationships, so it's a bit fuzzy whether it's smoking or exposures, etc. So we probably know about a little bit the top of the iceberg, and the situation for controlling exposures is rather regulatory driven. It's not something like mental health nowadays. Everybody is trying to stay fit. Employers also are concerned about mental health and issues like that, but exposures may be a little bit less a collective problem. So we thought maybe we can do that differently as a community. And we thought, well, what is needed then? So first we tried to make a vision on that, because it's more than technology. Of course, because of the new technologies, we are now in the digital area with sensors around us. A lot may be possible. But it's, of course, important to have a vision on how it would work in a complete system. And so we worked on the vision, we worked on the tooling. Of course, you also, if you want to apply it, you need guidelines, methods, standards, and you need to involve everyone who has to work with it or has to apply it, or in order to create trust or mutual interest, things like that. Otherwise, it's just technology which isn't, most likely will not be used. So I'll take you through a little bit through this idea to actually change management of exposures. This is to highlight why it's more possible nowadays, and of course some of you have already used these type of local sensors. I actually was in a session this morning that was talked about how valid the measurements are, but of course there are a lot of advantages. They're relatively cheap, easy to use. you can merge them with the data streams might be merged with other data streams, so you have more complete information. And the most important is they're high resolution, so you have better information on the total time over days, over months, even if you would like to. And you have better information spatial-wise and temporal-wise. So this high-resolution data might be very interesting. And the data may lead to direct feedback, which would really help for better awareness, better discussion, better possibilities to work on prevention. So, and some examples are shown here, and with the apps belonging to them. Yeah, this is, I took out some of the information from ILCO because I didn't know about the experiments, but the conclusions about these low-cost sensors and the experiments we did, and some of you did, I guess, are that they're actually quite good in pinpointing peaks and in comparable information. They're not accurate enough for absolute conclusions, and so to make inference about exposure assessments, exposure limits, it's more difficult, but they can very well be used for where are the peaks with what type of work, where in the location. So our vision was we would like to go to a virtual occupational hygiene assistant as a point in the future, the VOA. And the VOA would, if in our view, would serve tools, ways of protocols for interpretation, and examples how to use it for both worker, HSE manager, and even the managers maybe, and for designing workplace purposes, etc. So what should VOA be? It should be flexible, modular, and making use of rather low cost or easy to use sensors, focus on these workers, generating feedback that makes sense for the worker and is interpretable, and maybe in the end even may initiate interventions, maybe automatic, turning on ventilation or shutting off sources, but also other man-made interventions. And so we made a video. I tried if it was worthwhile showing to you, because then it would be visible. But I ended up in YouTube with commercials, etc. So I thought, no, that's not a good idea. But the VOA, you can look it up at our website of TNO, and it's more or less what I told you and what you can imagine yourself: real-time, high-resolution, dynamic data acquisition. And so we wrote also, beyond next to the video, we wrote a paper about the modeling that you should be able to do when you apply this vision. And we also wrote a paper about what would it mean for ethics and the way workers would look upon it. After we had discussed this vision and the video with all players in the area of managing health and safety in the Netherlands. So, and then I'll take you through some of the tooling, because we had a vision, we had an idea how the different players reacted to it, but of course you need tooling, and that's something that we all together might work on. First, we needed a data infrastructure, which is privacy, how do you call it, is allowing, and where you could actually handle big data sets and also from different sources. And we have built one, extended one, Excite, but that up till now is really a research data infrastructure. And on the infrastructure, we also work on feedback, etc., to different parties. And the idea is that also the data cleaning, data integration is made more feasible and more accessible due to the platform, and that we also, in the end, would really like to have the comparison with limit values, but that, of course, needs data that allow that. So, and what we also like to do is, I come to that later, is add contextual information to the exposure information. So also that you have, with the data, a better view on where the problems are. And but that, of course, was for researchers, the Excite platform, and we also tried to make a prototype which was much more plug and play for use within a company by the HSE manager, because making it really plug and play is still far away. But this was a prototype, it's not really in production. And we also worked on what type of sensors would you actually want beyond the local sensor that are commercially available. And because I work at TNO, which is a large, how do you call it, innovation institute with lots of technical expertise also, they made a particle measurement instrument which with identification of chemical identity, which has been told to me not on the market. It's an optical spectrometry instrument with a mini microcyclone for the particle size distribution, etc. It used to be portable but big. Now it's more like a big handheld phone. But also this is still prototype. But you can see that if you measure at the work site the silica, which is the crystalline silica, which is the green one, where we were mainly interested in, is measured separately from the other other parts. And of course, development of wearable with a wearable instrument with valid data, of course, is very important with this work. What we also did is look at in the toolbox you also need analytic instruments to get sensible feedback. And what they did it with kriging, which I'm told is a statistical method to work on temporal and local data, so you know where and when exposures are happening. And on the purple area, once in a while you see some yellow. It should be a little film with where the eye exposures were measured. And here, down here, it was measured with people wearing wearables, and the more workers with the wearables you have in the location, the better your estimate is where it's high exposures and at what time the exposures are high. So I thought I've seen this demonstration because once in a while we show off to stakeholders, etc., and it was quite impressive. And this is about the contextual information we want to integrate in our exposure measurements, and this was about welding, and see whether we could integrate welding fumes, UV, noise, etc. So to make a better mix of health exposure risk for health. And I'm not really, won't get into what you see exactly because I haven't looked into that in detail. But it's, yeah, so this, with this, I've taken you on our journey with with the vision and the idea, and our first start with the tooling box. And then, of course, we needed about calibration, protocols for measurements, so that you actually know whether measurements between institutes, between certain situations are actually similar, and that we are working together with HSE and NIOSH. We did round-robin studies in similar situations and with specific measurements to see whether we in the labs got the same results, and also in the fields were sort of similar in what we got in results. And we also working on together with others, of course, on the sense standard for local sensors, and working on manuals, what you can do and what you cannot do with the low-cost sensors, which of course also are, I already heard that, very coming and going on the market. And of course these are also, we did some scientific papers on that. Let me see. Yeah, so after the testing and the protocols and the comparison between the different institutes, we did a lot of field testing, which I sort of limited to this slide and to the results, because I've seen in other presentations that there is comparison of the sensors that are wearable with the on-site measurements, more extensive measurements. But even also in practical situation, they seem to perform pretty well, but still use for quantitative use, there's still not calibration for quantitative use needs further exploration. And so, like I said, the playbook, protocols and instructions about what you can do with them is in the making. So that was a bit of our circle, and I didn't talk too much about the last part, namely, can we really shift to maybe a better, together with how it's going now, but maybe a better way of giving people tools and inspections tools to monitor, needs further discussion with others, and needs further development of the hardware. I now notice I have the slides over here too, quite handy. So, okay. And of course, we want to collaborate with a lot of you. If please tell me, and I will tell Ilko if you are willing to do so. And some general conclusions Ilko put on the slides is that the sensors are a welcome addition, but for awareness, early warning, but it needs more research to really have calibration and comparison to exposure limits. But you can make instruments that really are much more oriented towards actionable prevention and management than only exposure limit testing, and we would like to work on that further in the future.
Thank you,
that was it.